Billionaire received an unexpected call. His wife left their newborn with him and went away before we begin. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from, and once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Oh, and make sure to follow our channel for more stories like this. Now, sit back and enjoy every detail. The glass walls of the 42nd floor conference room reflected the Seattle skyline as Noah Edivane adjusted his platinum cufflinks, his steel gray eyes scanning the quarterly projections displayed on the massive screen. At 34, he commanded Edivane Renewables with the same precision that had earned him his first billion by 30. His dark hair, perfectly styled despite the 12-hour workday, caught the late afternoon light as he leaned back in his Italian leather chair. The wind farm acquisition in Oregon will increase our capacity by 30%. Noah's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. His tailored charcoal suit emphasized his athletic build, a testament to dawn workouts that never varied, regardless of his schedule. I want contracts finalized by Friday. His phone buzzed against the mahogany table. Noah glanced at the caller ID, Leora. He let it go to voicemail, his attention returning to the presentation. His wife understood his work demands. She always had. 20 minutes later, as the meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of billion-dollar returns, Noah finally checked his messages. Leora's voice, usually warm and melodic, sounded strangely distant. Noah, I need you to come home. Now, there's something I need to tell you. He frowned, loosening his silk tie as he walked toward his private elevator. In the 3 years they'd been married, Leora had never sounded so hollow. His mind raced through possibilities as the elevator descended. Was she sick? Had something happened to her parents in Portland? The drive to their Bellevue mansion usually calmed him, but tonight the familiar route felt endless. Their home, a modern masterpiece of glass and stone nestled among towering evergreens, had been their sanctuary since Elijah's birth 2 months ago. Noah had hired the best interior designers, ensuring every detail reflected Leora's sophisticated taste, while maintaining the warmth she insisted their child needed. He pushed through the front door, his Italian leather shoes echoing against the polished concrete floors. Leora? The house felt different. Too quiet. Usually, by this time, he could hear the gentle sounds of Leora moving through their evening routine, perhaps humming while she prepared dinner, or the soft murmur of her voice as she read to Elijah. In here, came her reply from the living room. Noah found his wife standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Lake Sammamish. At 29, Leora possessed an understated elegance that had first captured his attention at a renewable energy summit in Vancouver. Her auburn hair, typically styled in soft waves that framed her heart-shaped face, was pulled back in a messy bun. Her green eyes, usually bright with intelligence and warmth, appeared tired, almost defeated. She wore a simple cream sweater and dark jeans, her feet bare on the Persian rug they'd chosen together during their honeymoon in Turkey. Even exhausted, she was beautiful, though Noah noticed the shadows under her eyes had deepened since this morning. "Where's Elijah?" he asked, scanning the room for their son's bassinet. "Upstairs with Margaret," Leora replied, referring to the private nurse Noah had hired for emergencies. "She'll stay until you're comfortable with the routine." Something in her tone made Noah's chest tighten. Comfortable with what routine? "Leora, what's going on?" She turned to face him fully, her hands clasped in front of her. When they'd first met, she'd been covering a story about corporate sustainability practices. Her questions had been sharp, intelligent, challenging, everything that attracted him to her. Now she looked at him with that same directness, but there was pain beneath it. "I'm leaving for a few days, Noah." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Leaving? What do you mean, leaving?" "I've booked a flight to my aunt's cabin in Montana. I leave in 2 hours. Noah's mind struggled to process what he was hearing. "But, Elijah, you can't just—" "I can't do this anymore," Leora interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "At least not alone." "Alone?" Noah stepped closer, his business instincts kicking in. "Identify the problem. Find the solution. You're not alone. I'm here. We're partners in this." A bitter laugh escaped Leora's lips. "Partners? Noah, when was the last time you changed a diaper? Fed him at 2 in the morning? Hell, when was the last time you held our son for more than 5 minutes without checking your phone?" The accusations stung because they carried truth. "I'm working to provide for our family. Everything I do is for you and Elijah." "I know you think that," Leora said, her green eyes filling with unshed tears. "But providing isn't the same as being present." We planned this baby together, dreamed about him together. But somewhere between the pregnancy and now, you disappeared into your work and left me to figure out motherhood alone. Noah loosened his tie completely, feeling suddenly constricted. I thought, you seem to have everything under control. You're amazing with him. I'm drowning, Noah. The admission broke something in her voice. I love Elijah more than my own life, but I've lost myself completely. I haven't written a single article since he was born. I haven't had a conversation with another adult that wasn't about feeding schedules or sleep patterns. I shower every 3 days if I'm lucky. The vulnerability in her confession made Noah's throat tighten. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. She moved to the side table and picked up a leather folder. I left these for you. Feeding schedules, sleep routines, emergency contacts, pediatrician information. Margaret will help you with the basics, but Noah, this isn't about childcare logistics. This is about you learning what it actually means to be Elijah's father. Noah took the folder with hands that trembled slightly. How long? A week? Maybe 2. Leora picked up a small suitcase Noah hadn't noticed before. I need to remember who I am when I'm not just Elijah's mother or Noah's wife. I need to figure out if we can still be the family we dreamed of, or if we've become something else entirely. The sound of a baby's cry drifted down from upstairs, and Noah saw Leora's entire body tense with instinctive response, but she didn't move toward the stairs. He's hungry, she said, checking her watch. Margaret has bottles prepared. He likes to be held upright for 15 minutes after feeding to help with gas. Noah stared at the folder in his hands, filled with information about his own son's needs. Needs he should have known instinctively. Leora, please. We can work this out. I'll hire more help, or... This isn't about hiring help, Noah. She moved toward him and placed her hand on his cheek. Her touch was gentle but final. This is about you choosing to be the father you always said you wanted to be. Not the idea of a father. Not the provider father, but the real thing. Elijah's cries grew more insistent, and this time Noah felt an unfamiliar tug in his chest. Not annoyance at the interruption, but genuine concern for his son's distress. I have to go, Leora whispered, grabbing her purse from the console table. My flight leaves at 8. Wait, Noah called after her, but she was already opening the front door. She paused at the threshold. There's a letter on your nightstand. Read it when you're ready to understand why I had to do this. And then she was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of her lavender perfume and the sound of their son crying for attention that Noah suddenly realized he'd been failing to give. Standing alone in their $1 million living room, holding a folder full of instructions for caring for his own child, Noah Edavain faced a challenge no amount of money or business acumen could solve, learning to be the father his son needed, not just the one he thought he was. Would you have made the same choice as Leora, leaving to make your partner understand what true partnership means? The silence after Leora's departure felt deafening, broken only by Elijah's increasingly desperate cries from upstairs. Noah stood frozen in the foyer, his expensive watch ticking away seconds that felt like hours. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, commanded boardrooms full of executives, but the sound of his own son crying paralyzed him with an unfamiliar helplessness. Margaret appeared at the top of the grand staircase, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing the crisp white uniform that made her look more like a medical professional than a nanny. At 63, she possessed the calm efficiency of someone who'd spent decades caring for children of Seattle's elite families. Mr. Edavain, she called down gently. Elijah is ready for his evening feeding. Noah climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet runner. The nursery door stood open, revealing the room Leora had designed with meticulous care. Soft gray walls complemented white furniture, while a mobile of tiny hot air balloons rotated slowly above the crib, casting gentle shadows in the warm lamplight. Elijah lay in Margaret's arms, his tiny face red with frustration, fists flailing at the air. At 2 months old, he was still impossibly small, weighing barely 12 pounds, but his lungs worked with surprising strength. His dark hair, so much like Noah's, was still fine and wispy, and when his eyes opened between cries, they showed the deep blue that pediatricians said might change to gray or brown as he grew. Here, Margaret said, extending the baby toward Noah. He knows when his routine is disrupted. Children sense tension. Noah hesitated, then carefully took his son, supporting the tiny head as he'd been shown in those first overwhelming days after birth. Elijah's crying intensified, and Noah felt his chest tighten with panic. What am I doing wrong? Margaret handed him a warmed bottle. Nothing wrong, just inexperienced. Watch his cues. She demonstrated the proper angle, showing how to test the milk temperature on his wrist. Mrs. Edivane mentioned you've been busy with work lately. The understatement stung. Noah settled into the plush rocking chair Leora had insisted they needed, trying to position Elijah as Margaret instructed. The baby rejected the bottle twice before finally latching on, his cries subsiding into small, hungry sounds. "There we go," Margaret murmured approvingly. He just needed patience. As Elijah drank, his tiny fingers curled around Noah's index finger with surprising strength. For the first time since coming home, Noah felt something other than panic, a strange, warm sensation he couldn't quite name. His son's grip was firm, trusting, absolute in its dependence. Mrs. Edivane left detailed instructions, Margaret continued, arranging clean burp cloths on the nearby dresser. But caring for a baby isn't really about following a manual, Mr. Edivane. It's about learning his language. His language? Every baby communicates differently. Elijah's hungry cry is sharp and insistent, like what you just heard. His tired cry is more whimpery, almost like he's complaining. When he's uncomfortable, he makes little grunting sounds. Margaret's eyes crinkled with gentle humor. You'll learn to distinguish them, just as your wife did. Noah studied his son's face as he drank. Elijah's features were still developing, but Noah could see hints of Leora in the shape of his nose, the curve of his ears. The baby's eyes, when they briefly opened, seemed to focus on Noah's face with surprising intensity. "How long have you known my wife?" Noah asked. "Mrs. Edivane hired me 3 weeks ago for emergencies only. She was particular about wanting to handle everything herself." Margaret chose her words carefully. "She's a very dedicated mother, but perhaps too dedicated. Some women lose themselves in motherhood, especially when they feel they're managing alone." The criticism, however gentle, hit its mark. Noah had assumed Leora's natural competence with Elijah meant she was thriving. He'd been proud of how effortlessly she seemed to handle everything, never recognizing the cost of that apparent ease. The bottle emptied, and Margaret showed Noah how to burp Elijah properly, supporting his chest and patting his back with gentle but firm movements. When the satisfying little burp came, Elijah settled against Noah's shoulder with a contented sigh. "He's ready for bed now," Margaret observed. "Same routine every night. Bottle, burp, clean diaper, then down in his crib with the white noise machine." Mrs. Edivane is very consistent with his schedule. Noah carried Elijah to the changing table, fumbling with the tiny diaper tabs as Margaret patiently corrected his technique. His large hands felt clumsy handling something so delicate, but gradually he managed a reasonably secure fit. "Will you stay tonight?" he asked as he placed Elijah in the crib. "I can remain until morning if you'd prefer, but Mrs. Edivane was quite specific that you should experience the full routine." Margaret's tone was professional but not unkind. "Elijah typically sleeps 3-hour stretches. He'll wake around midnight and again around 3 for feeding and changing." Noah's phone buzzed with messages from his assistant about tomorrow's board meeting. Instinctively, he reached for it, then stopped. Elijah was settling into sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm that had become the backdrop to their home life. "I'll manage," Noah said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Margaret nodded approvingly. "The monitor is connected to your phone. The night bottles are prepared in the mini fridge here. Just warm them in the bottle warmer. And Mr. Edivane," she paused at the nursery door, "don't try to solve this like a business problem. Babies don't respond to efficiency charts or strategic planning. They need presence, patience, and time." Alone with his sleeping son, Noah sank back into the rocking chair. The nursery felt peaceful now, filled with the soft sounds of Elijah's breathing and the gentle hum of the white noise machine. Through the window, he could see the lights of Seattle twinkling across the lake, a reminder of the city where he'd built his empire. His phone buzzed again. Emails from Tokyo, London, New York. Markets that never slept. Deals that demanded immediate attention. For the first time in years, Noah turned off his phone completely and placed it on the dresser. He walked to his bedroom where Leora's letter waited on his nightstand, her elegant handwriting visible through the cream envelope. But he wasn't ready yet. Instead, he changed into comfortable clothes, jeans and a simple cotton shirt he rarely wore, and returned to the nursery. Settling back into the rocking chair, Noah watched his son sleep. Elijah's face was perfectly relaxed, his tiny hands curled near his cheeks. In the soft lamplight, Noah could see every detail: the delicate eyelashes, the small birthmark behind his left ear, the way his lips moved slightly in sleep as if he were dreaming of milk. For the first time since Elijah's birth, Noah wasn't thinking about quarterly projections or acquisition strategies. He was simply present, learning the rhythm of his child's breathing, memorizing the way moonlight fell across the crib, understanding that this moment, quiet, unproductive, unmeasurable, might be the most important work he'd ever done. When Elijah stirred slightly in his sleep, making soft newborn sounds, Noah felt his heart clench with an emotion so powerful it took his breath away. This was his son, his responsibility, his privilege. The realization that he'd been missing this every single night since Elijah's birth hit him like a physical blow, followed immediately by the devastating understanding of what Leora had been carrying alone. The piercing cry shattered Noah's sleep like glass breaking in the silence. He bolted upright in bed, momentarily disoriented, his heart hammering against his ribs. The red numbers on his alarm clock glowed 12:47 a.m. Elijah's monitor crackled with the sound of their son's distress, each cry seeming to escalate in urgency. Noah stumbled from bed, his bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floors. In his previous life, was it really just 12 hours ago? He would have nudged Leora awake and rolled over, trusting her to handle the interruption. Now the responsibility sat solely on his shoulders, heavy and unfamiliar. The nursery felt different in the dead of night. Shadows stretched across the walls, and the cheerful mobile looked almost ominous in the dim glow of the nightlight. Elijah lay in his crib, his small body rigid with protest, face red with the effort of his cries. "Hey, buddy," Noah whispered, his voice rough with sleep. "I'm here." He lifted Elijah carefully, remembering Margaret's instructions about supporting the head. The baby felt impossibly fragile against his chest, but his cries only intensified at the contact. Noah's confidence from earlier in the evening evaporated instantly. The bottle warmer seemed to take an eternity. Noah paced the nursery, bouncing Elijah gently as he'd seen Leora do countless times, but nothing soothed his son's distress. Each cry felt like an accusation. "You don't know what you're doing. You're failing already. Come on, come on," he muttered at the bottle warmer, checking the temperature for the third time. When he finally offered the bottle to Elijah, the baby turned his head away, arching his back in frustration. Noah tried different positions, different angles, growing more desperate with each failed attempt. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool night air. How did Leora make this look so effortless? How had she been doing this alone night after night while he slept undisturbed just down the hall? Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Elijah latched onto the bottle. The sudden quiet felt miraculous. Noah sank into the rocking chair, his legs weak with relief and exhaustion. As Elijah drank, Noah studied his son's face in the soft light. The baby's eyes were open now, unfocused but somehow alert, as if he was taking in this new experience of his father's presence at this sacred midnight hour. His tiny hand had found its way to Noah's chest, resting there with complete trust. "I'm sorry," Noah whispered, the words coming unexpectedly. "I'm sorry I haven't been here before." The feeding took longer than expected. Elijah dozed between ounces, requiring gentle coaxing to finish the bottle. When it was time for burping, Noah fumbled with the positioning again, earning a small spit-up on his shoulder that soaked through his t-shirt. The diaper change proved another challenge. In the harsh overhead light Noah had switched on for better visibility, Elijah began crying again, his little legs kicking frantically. Noah's hands shook as he tried to clean and change his son, the simple task feeling monumentally complex in his overtired state. "Please, Elijah," he pleaded softly. "Work with me here." It took 3 attempts to get the diaper on properly. The first 2 loose, the second backward, the third finally secure. By the time Noah turned off the bright light and settled back into the dim calm of the nursery, both he and Elijah were exhausted. But when Noah placed his son back in the crib, Elijah's eyes snapped open, and he began to cry again. Not the hungry cry from before, but something different. The whimpery, complaining sound Margaret had described as his tired cry. Noah tried everything he could remember. The pacifier Leora sometimes used, gentle shushing sounds, soft humming. Nothing worked. Elijah's cries grew more insistent, and Noah felt panic rising in his chest. What if something was wrong? What if Elijah was sick? What if, instinctively, Noah picked up his son again and began to walk. Up and down the nursery, out into the hallway, down the stairs to the living room where the floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the sleeping city beyond. The motion seemed to help. Elijah's cries softened to whimpers, then to small, tired sounds. "You just wanted company," Noah realized aloud. You didn't want to be alone. The irony wasn't lost on him. How many nights had Leora walked these same floors carrying their restless son while Noah slept peacefully, oblivious to her exhaustion? How many times had she stood at these windows, probably feeling as overwhelmed and isolated as he felt right now? Noah settled onto the large sectional sofa, Elijah resting on his chest, the baby's breathing gradually evened out, his small body relaxing into sleep. But Noah didn't move to put him back in the crib. Instead, he remained perfectly still, afraid to disturb the peaceful moment. His phone sat on the coffee table, silent for the first time in years. No urgent emails, no international calls, no emergency board meetings. Just the weight of his son on his chest and the gradual understanding that this was what Leora had been trying to tell him. Presence wasn't about being in the same house. It was about being fully here, fully engaged, fully committed to the moment. At 2:15 a.m., Noah finally carried Elijah back upstairs and successfully placed him in the crib. This time, the baby stayed asleep. Noah stood watching him for several minutes, marveling at how different everything felt from just a few hours ago. Back in his own bedroom, Noah noticed Leora's letter again. This time he picked it up, turning the envelope over in his hands. But exhaustion won over curiosity, and he placed it back on the nightstand. Tomorrow, he thought, when he was ready to hear what she needed to say. He was drifting back to sleep when Elijah's cry pierced the silence again. 3:23 a.m. This time, Noah didn't feel panic. Tired, yes. Overwhelmed, certainly, but not panicked. He was learning Elijah's language just as Margaret had promised he would. This was the hungry cry again, sharp and insistent. The second feeding went more smoothly. Noah's hands were steadier, his movements more confident. Elijah latched onto the bottle immediately, and the diaper change, while not exactly graceful, was accomplished without tears from either of them. As Noah settled back into the rocking chair for the post-feeding cuddle that was becoming their routine, he found himself thinking about Leora's words. I'm drowning, Noah. For the first time, he truly understood what she meant. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion, though that was overwhelming enough. It was the constant vigilance, the endless cycle of needs that had to be met regardless of how tired you were, how much your own needs had to be set aside, and she had been doing this every night for 2 months. Alone. The revelation hit him with devastating clarity. Leora hadn't left because she stopped loving their family. She had left because she loved them too much to watch it fall apart while he remained obliviously absent. When Elijah finally settled back into sleep at 4:47 a.m., Noah didn't immediately return to bed. Instead, he walked to the window that overlooked their backyard, where dawn was beginning to touch the edges of the sky with pale gold light. His first night as a fully present father was ending, and Noah felt fundamentally changed. Not just tired, though he was exhausted in ways he'd never experienced, but awakened to a reality he'd been sleepwalking through for months. Somewhere in Montana, Leora was probably lying awake too, wondering if she'd made the right choice. Noah found himself hoping she was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, free from the weight of sole responsibility she'd been carrying. He owed her more than an apology. He owed her a transformation. Noah's eyes burned as he stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles shadowed his usually sharp gray eyes, and his normally perfect hair stuck up at odd angles. 2 nights of broken sleep had left him looking more human than he had in years, and feeling it too. The shower's hot water did little to wash away his exhaustion, but it gave him precious minutes to think. Elijah had woken twice more after the 3 a.m. feeding, once with a dirty diaper that had somehow leaked through his pajamas, requiring a complete outfit change and crib sheet replacement that had taken Noah nearly 40 minutes to figure out. By 6:30 a.m., when Elijah's internal clock declared it morning, Noah felt like he'd been hit by a freight train, yet there was something oddly satisfying about the exhaustion. It felt earned in a way his business fatigue never had. His phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 unread emails. The Edivane Renewables board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m., a crucial presentation about the Oregon wind farm acquisition. 3 months ago, nothing could have kept him away from that meeting. Now, standing in his kitchen while Elijah dozed in his bouncy seat, Noah found himself questioning everything he'd previously considered important. Margaret arrived at 8 a.m. looking professionally pristine despite the early hour. She assessed the scene with experienced eyes. Empty bottles in the sink, burp cloths draped over every surface, Noah's rumpled appearance, and Elijah peacefully sleeping after what had clearly been a challenging night. "How did you manage?" she asked kindly, beginning to organize the chaos with efficient movements. "Barely," Noah admitted, attempting to fold a receiving blanket and failing spectacularly. "I don't know how Leora did this alone. I feel like I've been through a war." Margaret smiled as she demonstrated the proper way to fold the tiny garment. "Mrs. Edivane mentioned you might need some time to adjust. She suggested I stay through the weekend if necessary." Noah's pride bristled momentarily, then deflated. "Maybe that would be helpful. I want to do as much as possible myself. I need to learn this." "Of course," Margaret agreed. "I'll be here for support, but you'll handle his care. Think of me as a consultant rather than a replacement." Noah's phone rang, his assistant with questions about the board meeting. As he listened to the familiar litany of urgent business matters, Elijah stirred in his seat, making small sounds that Noah was beginning to recognize as early hunger cues. "I need to call you back," Noah said, cutting off his assistant mid-sentence. It was the first time in his career he'd ever done such a thing. The morning feeding went more smoothly than the night ones had. Noah was learning to read Elijah's signals, to anticipate his needs before they became urgent cries. As his son drank contentedly, Noah felt a quiet pride in their growing rhythm. "Mrs. Edivane left something for you," Margaret mentioned, tidying the nursery. "Besides the care instructions, she said to give it to you when you seemed ready." Noah looked up from Elijah's peaceful face. "Ready for what?" "To really listen," I believe were her words. After Elijah's feeding, burping, and diaper change, Noah settled him for his morning nap. The house fell into blessed quiet, and Noah found himself drawn to his bedroom where Leora's letter still waited on the nightstand. He held the cream envelope for a long moment, recognizing Leora's careful handwriting. "Noah, when you're ready to understand." Taking a deep breath, he opened it. "My dearest Noah, if you're reading this, it means I've done the hardest thing I've ever done. Left our son with you and walked away from the life we built together. I need you to know this isn't about love. I love you more than I thought possible to love another person. I love Elijah with a ferocity that sometimes frightens me. This is about survival. For 2 months, I've watched you love the idea of being a father while remaining completely absent from the reality of it. You light up when people congratulate you on becoming a dad. You beam with pride when colleagues ask about Elijah. You've told me dozens of times how happy you are that we're parents. But Noah, happiness and presence are not the same thing. Do you know that Elijah has a tiny birthmark behind his left ear? Do you know he gets hiccups every time he laughs? Do you know he's been sleeping through the night for 3 weeks, except when he's having a growth spurt? Do you know he's outgrown all his newborn clothes and we need to buy the next size up? I don't expect you to know these things because you've never been present long enough to notice them. You come home after he's asleep, leave before he's awake, and on weekends you're either working or so exhausted from work that you exist in a fog of fatigue and distraction. I've tried to talk to you about this, but every conversation gets redirected to logistics. More help, better scheduling, hiring additional staff. You approach our family like a business problem to be solved rather than a relationship to be lived. I'm not angry anymore, Noah. Anger requires energy I don't have. I'm just empty. I've lost myself so completely in the daily needs of our son that I don't remember who I was before. My career, my interests, my identity, all sacrificed on the altar of a motherhood I'm apparently supposed to find fulfilling enough to sustain me entirely. But here's what terrifies me most. I can see our future stretching out like this forever. Me, handling everything domestic, while you handle everything financial. Me, knowing our child's heart while you know his college fund balance. We'll become strangers who happen to share a mortgage and a child, and Elijah will grow up thinking that's what marriage looks like. I won't do that to him. I won't do that to us. So I'm giving you a choice, Noah. Not an ultimatum. A choice. You can continue being the father you've been, in which case Margaret will help you find excellent full-time childcare, and we'll work out custody arrangements. Or you can become the father you always claimed you wanted to be. Elijah doesn't need a provider, Noah. He needs a parent. He needs someone who knows his cries, who notices when he's developing new skills, who is present for the countless tiny moments that make up a childhood. He needs someone who chooses him, actively and repeatedly, even when it's inconvenient. If you can be that person, really be that person, not just promise to try harder, then maybe we can rebuild what we've lost. But it will require you to change in ways that might feel impossible. It will mean choosing our family over deals that feel urgent. It will mean accepting that being a good father is more important than being a successful CEO. I'll be in Montana for as long as it takes you to decide who you want to be. There's no deadline, no timeline, just the quiet space you need to figure out if the man I married is still somewhere underneath all that ambition. I hope he is, Noah. For all our sakes, I hope he is. All my love, Leora P.S. Elijah's laugh sounds exactly like yours used to, before you forgot how to find things funny. Maybe he can remind you. Noah's hands trembled as he finished reading. He set the letter on the nightstand and walked to the window, staring out at the lake without really seeing it. Leora's words echoed in his mind, each observation hitting like a physical blow because of its accuracy. He didn't know about the birthmark. He hadn't noticed Elijah outgrowing his clothes. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard his son laugh, much less recognized any similarity to his own laughter. The realization was devastating. He had become a stranger to his own child. His phone buzzed with another call from the office. This time, Noah didn't even look at the display. Instead, he turned the phone face down and walked back to the nursery, where Elijah was beginning to stir from his nap. Looking down at his son, Noah searched for the birthmark Leora had mentioned. There it was, a tiny crescent-shaped mark behind Elijah's left ear, no bigger than a freckle. How had he never noticed it before? "Hey, little man," Noah whispered, lifting Elijah from the crib. "Looks like it's just you and me for a while. What do you say we figure this out together?" For the first time since Leora left, Noah felt something other than panic or exhaustion. He felt determination. Not the aggressive, deal-closing determination that had built his empire, but something gentler and more powerful. The determination to become worthy of the trust he saw in his son's unfocused blue gaze. The Oregon wind farm acquisition could wait. The board meeting could wait. Everything could wait. His family couldn't. The Edivane Renewables boardroom fell into stunned silence as Noah's image flickered on the wall-mounted screen. Even through the video conference, his appearance was noticeably different. No perfectly pressed suit, no confident posture that commanded immediate attention. Instead, he wore a simple navy sweater, his hair slightly disheveled, and behind him, the warm tones of his home office replaced his usual stark corporate backdrop. "Let me understand this correctly," said Helena Morrison, the silver-haired board member whose investment firm held the second-largest stake in the company. "You're postponing the Oregon acquisition indefinitely?" Noah shifted in his chair, and the board members could hear soft baby sounds in the background, something that would have been unthinkable just days ago. "Not postponing, Helena. Delegating. David Chen has my complete authority to finalize the negotiations. He's more than capable of handling the technical aspects. But this is a billion-dollar deal, Noah," interjected Marcus Webb, his CFO of 8 years. "Your personal involvement has been crucial to every major acquisition we've made." Behind Noah, Elijah's distinctive hungry cry began to build. Noah glanced over his shoulder, then back at the screen. "Marcus, I trust your judgment completely. You have full authority to approve any terms David negotiates, provided they fall within our established parameters." The crying grew more insistent, and Noah stood up. "I need to handle this. We'll continue our discussion tomorrow." "Noah, wait." Helena started, but the screen had already gone dark. In the boardroom, 12 executives sat in bewildered silence. Noah Edivane had never, in 15 years of business, cut short a meeting for a personal matter. Some looked concerned about his mental state. Others wondered if the pressure of new parenthood had finally broken their notoriously driven CEO. Back in his home office, Noah was already moving toward the kitchen where Margaret was preparing Elijah's bottle. His son lay in his bouncy seat, face red with the effort of his cries, tiny fists waving in frustration. "Perfect timing," Margaret said with a knowing smile. "He's been asking for you for the past 5 minutes." Noah lifted Elijah, marveling at how natural the motion had become in just 3 days. "Hey, buddy. I know. Daddy was talking to boring people about boring things when he should have been paying attention to you." The bottle was the perfect temperature. Noah had learned to test it properly now, understanding that too hot could burn Elijah's sensitive mouth while too cold would be rejected entirely. As his son latched on eagerly, Noah settled into what had become their feeding spot by the living room windows. "Mrs. Edivane called this morning," Margaret mentioned casually as she organized the baby supplies. "She wanted to know how things were going." Noah's heart skipped. "What did you tell her? That you were learning quickly? That Elijah seems comfortable with you?" Margaret paused thoughtfully. She sounded hopeful, but tired. Noah absorbed this information while watching Elijah drink. The baby's eyes were open today, focusing on Noah's face with increasing awareness. At 2 months, Elijah was beginning to show more personality, preferences for certain positions, distinctive reactions to different voices, and something that might have been the beginning of social smiles. Did she say when she might come home? She asked about you, not about timelines. Margaret replied gently. I think she's waiting to see what kind of man comes to get her. The weight of that statement settled over Noah. Leora wasn't just waiting for him to prove he could handle childcare logistics. She was waiting to see if he could become a different person entirely, someone who prioritized presence over productivity, relationship over results. His phone rang constantly throughout the afternoon, but Noah let every call go to voicemail. Instead, he focused on Elijah's routine, the afternoon feeding, tummy time on a soft blanket where his son was learning to lift his head, a diaper change that Noah managed without any assistance from Margaret. It was during tummy time that it happened. Noah was lying on the floor next to Elijah, making silly faces and speaking in the gentle, animated voice he'd discovered over the past few days. Elijah was working hard to keep his head up, his little face serious with concentration. Then Noah made a particularly ridiculous expression, eyes crossed, tongue sticking out slightly, and Elijah's face broke into what was unmistakably a smile. Not gas, not a reflexive expression, but a real, genuine smile directed entirely at his father. Margaret! Noah called, his voice filled with wonder. Did you see that? He smiled at me. Margaret appeared from the kitchen, dish towel in hand, wearing her own smile. His first social smile. Mrs. Edivane will be so happy to hear about it. Noah's throat tightened with emotion. This was what Leora had been trying to tell him. These moments were the real treasure, worth more than any acquisition or quarterly profit. How many of these milestones had he missed by being physically present, but emotionally absent? That evening, after Elijah's bedtime routine, Noah sat in his home office with a legal pad and began writing. Not business plans or strategic memos, but a letter to his son. Words he wanted to say, but that Elijah was too young to understand. Dear Elijah, today you smiled at me for the first time, and I finally understood what your mother has been trying to tell me. You don't need me to be perfect or successful or impressive. You just need me to be here, really here, paying attention to who you are instead of who I think you should become. I'm sorry it took your mother leaving for me to figure this out. I'm sorry I missed so many of your firsts because I thought providing for you was the same as loving you. I know better now. Tomorrow I'm going to make some changes that might seem crazy to other people. I'm going to restructure my entire company so that I can be the father you deserve. Some people will think I've lost my mind, choosing family over profit margins. But you smiled at me today, and I realize that smile is worth more than every deal I've ever made. The letter continued for several pages. Apologies, promises, dreams for their future together. Writing it felt like a form of prayer, a commitment to the man he was becoming rather than the man he'd been. Around midnight, Noah heard Elijah stirring on the monitor. Instead of dreading the interruption, he felt anticipation. These quiet midnight moments had become precious to him. The intimacy of caring for his son while the rest of the world slept. The gradual building of trust between them. As he climbed the stairs to the nursery, Noah's reflection caught in the hallway mirror. He looked different, softer somehow, more human. The sharp edges of corporate ambition had been worn away by sleepless nights and baby bottles, replaced by something more valuable, the contentment of a man who had found his true priority. Elijah was already crying by the time Noah reached the nursery, but the sound no longer triggered panic. Noah knew this cry now, knew it meant hunger, knew exactly how to respond, knew that in a few minutes his son would be peaceful and content in his arms. I'm here, he whispered, as he lifted Elijah from the crib. Daddy's here. And for the first time since becoming a father, those words felt completely true. 1 week. 7 days since Leora had walked out their front door with a single suitcase and shattered Noah's understanding of his own life. As he sat in Elijah's nursery at 5:47 a.m., watching his son sleep peacefully after their routine night feeding, Noah marveled at how completely his world had shifted. The man who once measured success in quarterly profits now celebrated small victories. A diaper changed without tears, a burp achieved on the first try, 30 minutes of uninterrupted sleep. His expensive suits hung untouched in the closet while he lived in comfortable jeans and soft cotton shirts that could survive baby spit-up. Margaret had left yesterday, declaring Noah ready to handle solo parenting. You're a different man than you were a week ago, she'd observed, packing her overnight bag. Mrs. Edivane will see it immediately. But would she? And more importantly, would she come home? Noah's phone showed 47 missed calls from the office, but he'd learned to distinguish between truly urgent matters and things that only felt urgent in his previous life. The Oregon acquisition was proceeding smoothly under David Chen's leadership. Quarterly projections remained strong, and the company was running exactly as Noah had designed it to, efficiently, profitably, and without requiring his constant presence. The discovery had been both liberating and humbling. He wasn't as indispensable as he'd believed. As Noah carried his coffee downstairs, leaving Elijah sleeping peacefully, he noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. Leora's laptop sat closed on the kitchen island, its surface covered with a thin layer of dust. She'd been too exhausted, too overwhelmed to even touch it in weeks. Curiosity and concern warred in his chest. Leora was a journalist, a writer. Her laptop was like an extension of her mind. For it to sit unused spoke to a level of depletion he was only beginning to understand. He opened it, and the screen came to life, showing her last document, a half-finished article about sustainable energy initiatives in rural communities. The timestamp showed she'd last worked on it 3 months ago, during her pregnancy. Below that, a folder labeled Story Ideas contained dozens of partially developed concepts, research notes for articles she'd never had time to write. Noah scrolled through document after document, seeing the gradual deterioration of his wife's professional life. Her writing had always been sharp, insightful, passionate. These fragments showed that same intelligence, but they stopped abruptly, abandoned as pregnancy and then motherhood consumed her time and energy. In a folder marked Personal, he found something that made his breath catch. A journal entry from 2 weeks after Elijah's birth. I love my son more than my own life, but I'm disappearing. Noah comes home and asks how my day was, and I don't know how to explain that I haven't had a thought that wasn't related to feeding schedules or sleep patterns. I used to have opinions about politics, ideas for stories, conversations that mattered. Now I can barely remember what I had for breakfast. I tried to write today while Elijah napped, but I just stared at the blank screen. My brain feels like cotton, soft and useless. I know this is normal. That new motherhood is supposed to be consuming, but I didn't expect to lose myself so completely. I look in the mirror and see a milk-stained stranger. Noah tells people how proud he is that we're parents, how much he loves being a father, but he hasn't changed a single diaper. He hasn't walked the floors at 3 a.m. with a screaming baby. He hasn't sat in a rocking chair for hours, mind numb with exhaustion, while our son cluster feeds. I think he believes I'm naturally good at this, that it comes easily to me. He doesn't see the anxiety, the constant second-guessing, the fear that I'm somehow damaging our perfect child with my inexperience. He sees competence where I feel chaos. Sometimes I wonder if he'd even notice if I disappeared entirely. Noah's hands trembled as he read. The last line hit him like a physical blow. She'd been drowning right in front of him, and he'd been too blind to see it. Worse, he'd interpreted her struggle as competence, her exhaustion as natural maternal instinct. Elijah's cry from the monitor interrupted his reading. Noah saved the document and closed the laptop, his mind reeling from Leora's raw honesty. As he climbed the stairs to tend to their son, he felt the full weight of his failures settling on his shoulders. But along with the guilt came determination. If Leora had lost herself in motherhood while he remained absent, then he needed to become present enough for both of them, not just as a father, but as a partner who saw her struggles and supported her dreams. The morning feeding routine that had once felt overwhelming now provided comfort and focus. Elijah settled against Noah's chest with increasing familiarity, his small body relaxed and trusting. They'd developed their own rhythm over the past week, a dance of needs met and comfort given that felt as natural as breathing. Your mama is an amazing writer, Noah told Elijah as the baby drank contentedly. She's brilliant and talented and passionate about things that matter. But she forgot all that because I made her carry our family alone. Elijah's eyes focused on Noah's face with the increasing awareness that marked his development. At 2 months old, he was becoming more interactive, more responsive to voices and expressions. His personality was emerging too. He seemed to prefer gentle music to silence, enjoyed being talked to during diaper changes, and had developed a particular fondness for the mobile above his changing table. After the feeding, Noah settled Elijah in his bouncy seat and returned to his home office. It was time to make the most important business decision of his life. He opened his laptop and began drafting an email to the Edivane Renewables Board of Directors. The subject line read, Restructuring Proposal, Transition to Chairman Role. Dear board members, After considerable reflection, I am proposing a fundamental restructuring of my role within Edivane Renewables. Effective immediately, I will be transitioning from CEO to Chairman of the Board, with David Chen assuming the role of Chief Executive Officer. This decision reflects my recognition that the company we've built together is strong enough to thrive under excellent leadership that isn't dependent on my daily oversight. More importantly, it reflects my commitment to achieving the work-life integration that enables sustainable success both professionally and personally. I will remain actively involved in strategic planning, major acquisitions, and long-term vision development, but my day-to-day operational responsibilities will transfer to David and the existing executive team. This structure will allow Edivane Renewables to continue its growth trajectory while ensuring that leadership decisions are made by people who can dedicate their full attention to the demands of daily operations. I understand this proposal may come as a surprise, but I believe it positions the company for long-term success while allowing me to model the kind of leadership that prioritizes both professional excellence and personal responsibility. I look forward to discussing this transition plan at our emergency board meeting, which I am calling for this Friday at 10 a.m. Respectfully, Noah Edivane founder and Chairman-elect Noah read the email 3 times before hitting send. Each word represented a choice: to prioritize differently, to live differently, to love differently. The financial implications were significant. Stepping back from daily operations would reduce his direct influence and potentially his compensation. But sitting in his home office listening to Elijah's contented sounds from the living room, Noah felt lighter than he had in years. His phone rang immediately. Helena Morrison, as expected. "Noah, what the hell is going on?" she demanded without preamble. "First you disappear from meetings, now you want to step down as CEO? Have you lost your mind?" "I've found it, actually," Noah replied calmly. "Helena, when was the last time you had dinner with your family without checking your phone? What does that have to do with running a company?" "Everything," Noah said. "A company that requires its leader to sacrifice everything meaningful for its success isn't sustainable. I built Edivane Renewables to change how we think about energy. Maybe it's time I applied that same innovation to how we think about leadership." There was silence on the other end. Then Helena's grudging laugh. "You're either having a breakdown or an epiphany. I suppose Friday's meeting will tell us which." After the call ended, Noah picked up Elijah and carried him to the kitchen windows that overlooked Lake Sammamish. The morning light painted everything in soft gold, and for the first time in months Noah felt genuinely hopeful about the future. "Your mom is going to be so surprised," he told Elijah, who responded with what might have been a smile. Daddy's learning to be brave enough to put family first. The question now was whether his courage would be enough to bring Leora home. The Edivane Renewables boardroom had never felt more like a courtroom. 12 faces stared at Noah through the conference room's glass walls as he adjusted Elijah in his arms, the baby carrier secured across his chest like armor. After 10 days in this new reality, Noah had learned that bringing his son to the emergency board meeting wasn't just practical, it was symbolic. "You cannot be serious about this." Helena Morrison's voice cut through the tension as Noah settled into his usual chair at the head of the mahogany table. "You're making billion-dollar decisions while literally babysitting." "I'm parenting," Noah corrected quietly, his hand instinctively moving to support Elijah's head as the baby stirred against his chest. "And yes, Helena, I've never been more serious about anything in my life." David Chen, seated to Noah's right, looked both honored and terrified by the prospect of becoming CEO. At 38, he'd been Noah's most trusted lieutenant for 6 years, but stepping into the founder's role was a leap neither of them had anticipated making so soon. "The optics alone could tank our stock price," Marcus Webb interjected, shuffling through financial projections. "Investors don't want to see leadership instability, especially not leadership that brings babies to board meetings." Elijah chose that moment to make a small, contented sound. Not quite a coo, but close. Several board members' expressions softened despite themselves, and Noah felt a quiet pride in his son's perfect timing. "Marcus, our Q3 numbers are the strongest in company history," Noah replied calmly. "The Oregon acquisition is proceeding ahead of schedule. Our renewable energy patents are generating record licensing revenue. If our stock price suffers because our leadership prioritizes sustainable work-life integration, then we're attracting the wrong kind of investors." Helena leaned back in her chair, studying Noah with the intensity that had made her one of the most successful venture capitalists in Seattle. "This is about your wife leaving, isn't it?" The boardroom fell silent. Noah felt 12 pairs of eyes on him, waiting for his response. A month ago, he would have deflected, redirected, treated his personal life as completely separate from his professional decisions. Now, with Elijah's warm weight against his chest, he chose honesty. "This is about becoming the man my family needs me to be," he said simply. "Leora didn't leave because she stopped loving our family. She left because I had become someone who valued everything except what matters most." "And you think stepping down as CEO will fix your marriage?" asked Jennifer Walsh, the board's newest member and a former Fortune 500 executive. "I think becoming fully present for my son and partner will fix my life," Noah replied. "Everything else is secondary." The meeting continued for 2 hours, covering transition plans, leadership structures, and financial implications. David Chen would assume the CEO role effective immediately, with Noah maintaining strategic oversight as chairman. It was a radical restructuring, but Noah's calm certainty gradually won over even the most skeptical board members. As the meeting concluded, Noah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm outside your house. We need to talk." Samantha Noah's blood ran cold. Samantha Reeves, Leora's college roommate, maid of honor at their wedding, and the one person who had never particularly liked him. If Samantha was here, it meant Leora had sent her. The question was whether she came as an ambassador or an executioner. The drive home felt endless. Elijah sleeping peacefully in his car seat while Noah's mind raced through possibilities. Samantha's silver Honda sat in his driveway, and through the windshield he could see her distinctive red curls and the determined expression he remembered from their few previous encounters. She emerged from her car as Noah parked, her movements sharp with barely contained emotion. At 31, Samantha possessed an intensity that made her an excellent investigative photographer but an intimidating adversary. Her camera bag slung over her shoulder suggested this wasn't entirely a social call. "Where is she?" Noah asked without preamble as he lifted Elijah's carrier from the car. "Safe," Samantha replied curtly, and wondering if the man she married still exists, or if he's been permanently replaced by a corporate robot. They walked to the front door in tense silence. Inside, Noah settled Elijah in his bouncy seat while Samantha examined the living space with a photographer's eye for detail. She noted the burp cloths draped over expensive furniture, the baby bottles in various stages of washing, the general chaos that came with solo parenting. "She's been calling you for 3 days," Samantha said finally. No answer. Noah's head snapped up. "She's been calling? I haven't received any." He checked his phone, then realized his mistake. In his focus on being present for Elijah, he'd been letting all calls go to voicemail without checking the numbers. He scrolled through his missed calls and there they were. 3 calls from Leora's number over the past 2 days, each lasting less than 30 seconds. She'd hung up rather than leave a message. "She thinks you don't want to talk to her," Samantha continued, her tone softer now but still guarded. "She thinks maybe you're relieved she left, that it makes things simpler." "Simpler?" Noah's voice cracked with emotion. "Samantha, losing her is the most complicated thing that's ever happened to me. I've been afraid to call because I don't know if she wants to hear from me yet." Samantha studied him for a long moment, taking in his rumpled appearance, the natural way he moved around Elijah's equipment, the genuine distress in his voice. "She said you'd probably say that." "What else did she say?" "That she's scared. That leaving was the hardest thing she's ever done, but staying was killing her slowly." Samantha sat down across from Noah, her defensive posture relaxing slightly. "She said she keeps waiting for you to call and beg her to come home so you can go back to the way things were." "I don't want things to go back," Noah said firmly. "I want them to move forward. I want to build something new, something better." Elijah began to fuss, and Noah immediately moved to comfort him. Samantha watched as he expertly checked for hunger cues, tested a bottle temperature, and settled into what was clearly an established feeding routine. "She said you didn't know how to hold him properly," Samantha observed. "I didn't," Noah admitted, looking down at his son's content face. "I didn't know anything about him. I was so proud of being his father, without ever learning how to actually be his father. And now? Now I know he hiccups when he laughs. I know his hungry cry versus his tired cry. I know he has a birthmark behind his left ear and that he's outgrown all his newborn clothes." Noah's voice grew stronger with each detail. "I know that being his dad is the most important job I'll ever have, and I was failing at it spectacularly." Samantha pulled out her phone and showed Noah a text message. "Ask him what Elijah's favorite lullaby is." Noah smiled for the first time since Samantha had arrived. He likes when I hum The Way You Look Tonight, Sinatra version, not the jazz arrangements. He falls asleep fastest when I sing it during the 2 a.m. feeding. Samantha's expression shifted from skeptical to surprised. She didn't expect you to know that. There's a lot she doesn't expect me to know now. A lot I couldn't have told her a week ago. Noah looked directly at Samantha. I read her journal entries. I saw how alone she felt, how invisible. I can't undo that, but I can prove I'm not the same man who let it happen. Prove it how? By calling her, tonight, and telling her what I should have said before she felt like leaving was her only option. Noah's voice was steady with newfound conviction. I'm ready to have the conversation we should have had months ago. Samantha studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. She's staying at her aunt's cabin near Glacier National Park. The cell service is spotty, but she checks her messages every evening around 8. Will you tell her I'm going to call? I'll tell her you asked about Elijah's lullaby, Samantha said, standing to leave. That'll tell her everything she needs to know about whether you're paying attention now. After Samantha left, Noah sat with Elijah in the quiet living room, watching the late afternoon light fade over Lake Sammamish. In a few hours he would make the most important phone call of his life. He would tell Leora about the man he was becoming, the choices he'd made, the future he wanted to build with her. But first he had a promise to keep to his son. As Elijah grew sleepy in his arms, Noah began to hum softly. Someday, when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold. Elijah's eyes drifted closed, his small body relaxing completely against his father's chest. And for the first time since becoming a parent, Noah felt completely present in the moment, not thinking about what came next, not worrying about what he'd left undone, just fully there with his son. It was exactly where he belonged. 8 o'clock in Montana was 7 o'clock in Seattle. Noah had fed Elijah, changed his diaper, and settled him for the evening in his crib. But his son seemed to sense the tension in the air. Every time Noah tried to put him down, Elijah would fuss until his father picked him up again. Finally, Noah accepted what Elijah was telling him. This conversation required them to be together. He settled into the living room chair with his son cradled against his chest. Leora's number pulled up on his phone screen. His finger hovered over the call button for a full minute. 10 days of transformation had led to this moment. But what if it wasn't enough? What if Leora had decided during her time away that their marriage was beyond saving? Elijah made a small sound and turned his face toward Noah's heart, as if offering comfort. The gesture gave Noah the courage he needed. He pressed call. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, Leora's voice came through, tentative and breathless. Noah? The sound of her name on his lips broke something open in his chest. Hi, beautiful. Silence stretched between them, filled with 10 days of hurt and hope and uncertainty. Noah could hear wind in the background, and he pictured her on the cabin's porch watching the Montana mountains catch the last light of day. Samantha said you knew about Elijah's lullaby, Leora said finally. The Way You Look Tonight, Noah replied softly. He likes the Sinatra version best. Falls asleep fastest during the 2 a.m. feeding if I hum it while I rock him. He heard her sharp intake of breath. You've been doing the 2 a.m. feedings? I've been doing all the feedings, Lee. All the diapers, all the night wakings, all of it. Noah's voice grew stronger. I've been learning what it means to be his father, not just his provider. For how long? Every day since you left. I sent Margaret home 3 days ago. It's just been Elijah and me, figuring it out together. The silence this time felt different, not empty, but full of things Leora was trying to process. I read your journal entries, Noah continued gently, the ones on your laptop about feeling invisible, about losing yourself. Lee, I'm so sorry I didn't see how much you were struggling. You read my... Her voice caught. Noah, those were private. I know. I'm sorry, but I needed to understand what I'd been blind to. I needed to see how badly I'd failed you. He paused, gathering his courage. You wrote that sometimes you wondered if I'd notice if you disappeared entirely. Noah, I would have noticed eventually, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But you're right that it might have taken me too long. I was so busy being proud of being a father that I never learned how to actually be one. Through the phone, he could hear Leora crying softly. I stepped down as CEO, Noah said into the silence. David Chen is running day-to-day operations now. I'm staying on as chairman, but my daily involvement is minimal. You what? The shock in her voice was absolute. Noah, that company is your life. No, Lee. You and Elijah are my life. The company is just how I pay for it." He looked down at his son, who was listening to his father's voice with the focused attention that still amazed Noah. "I realized that Edivane Renewables was built to change how we think about energy. Maybe it's time I applied that same innovation to how I think about everything else." Leora was quiet for a long moment. "The board must think you've lost your mind." Helena Morrison said exactly that. Noah laughed softly. "But you know what I told her? That I found my mind. For the first time in years, I know exactly what matters." "What matters, Noah?" "This," he said simply. "Right now, me talking to you while our son falls asleep on my chest. Yesterday, when Elijah smiled at me during his bath because I made a ridiculous face. Tomorrow morning when he'll wake up and I'll be the first person he sees." He could hear Leora's breathing change, could picture her wiping away tears. "I know I can't undo the months when you felt alone," Noah continued. "I can't give you back the parts of yourself that got lost in new motherhood while I stayed absent. But Lee, I can promise you that if you come home, you'll never feel invisible again." "How do I know this isn't just temporary?" Leora's voice was small, vulnerable. "How do I know you won't go back to the way things were once the novelty wears off?" Noah understood her fear. Words were easy. Sustainable change was harder. "Because I'm not the same person anymore. The man you married thought success meant never saying no to a business opportunity. The man I am now knows that success means never saying no to being present for the people I love. I'm scared, Noah." The admission was barely a whisper. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "I'm scared I've hurt you so badly that love isn't enough to fix it. I'm scared that I don't deserve another chance. But I'm not scared of being the father Elijah needs or the husband you deserve. That part feels like the first thing I've ever been certain about." Elijah stirred against Noah's chest, making the small sounds that meant he was transitioning to deeper sleep. Without thinking, Noah began to hum softly, "The way you look tonight," and Elijah settled immediately. Through the phone, Leora's breathing caught. "He can hear you humming?" "We do this every night now," Noah said. "Sometimes twice if he has trouble settling. He's got your stubborn streak. He knows what he wants." "He's got your stubborn streak too," Leora said, and Noah could hear the smile in her voice for the first time. "Noah, I've been thinking about coming home." "Yeah?" "My aunt said something yesterday that stuck with me. She said that sometimes we have to leave the people we love to give them space to become who they need to be. And I think maybe you needed me to leave so you could find out who you really were underneath all that ambition." Noah closed his eyes, feeling the truth of her words. "I did. I needed to understand that being successful at business meant nothing if I was failing at life. I want to come home, Noah. But I need you to understand something." Leora's voice grew stronger, more certain. "I can't go back to being just Elijah's mother and Noah's wife. I need to remember who I am as Leora. I need to write again, to have thoughts that aren't about feeding schedules, to feel like a whole person." "Then that's what we'll figure out together," Noah said immediately. "We'll get whatever help you need so you can rebuild your career. We'll create space for you to be all the things you are, not just the roles you fill for us." "You mean that?" "Lee, I fell in love with your mind first. Your passion for stories that matter, your intelligence, your fierce independence. I want all of that back for you, not despite our family but because of it. Elijah deserves to know his mother as the amazing woman she is, not just as someone who takes care of him." The silence this time felt different, hopeful, expectant. "There's a flight tomorrow night that gets into Seattle at 11:30, Leora said quietly. Noah's heart hammered. "Should I pick you up?" "I'll take a cab. I want to see you both when I'm ready, when I've had time to think during the flight." "Okay." Noah paused. "Lee, I love you. Not the idea of you. Not what I need you to be. I love who you actually are, and I'm sorry it took me so long to show you that." "I love you too," she whispered. "Both of you. So much it terrifies me." After they hung up, Noah sat holding Elijah in the quiet living room, his son now fast asleep against his chest. Tomorrow night, Leora would come home to a different house than the one she'd left. Not just cleaner or better organized, but fundamentally changed. She would come home to a man who knew that their son preferred his mobile turned to the left side, that he liked his bottles at exactly body temperature, that he slept best when he could hear his father's heartbeat. She would come home to a husband who understood that love wasn't just a feeling, but a series of choices, made new every day. But as Noah carried Elijah upstairs for the night, a nagging worry crept into his mind. Tomorrow would bring the real test, not just whether he could maintain these changes when Leora returned, but whether they could rebuild their marriage stronger than it was before. The phone call had been the easy part. Living up to his promises would be the real challenge. Noah had been awake since 4 a.m., not from Elijah's cries but from his own nervous energy. His son had actually slept through the night for the first time, a milestone that would have been worth celebrating if Noah's mind hadn't been entirely focused on the taxi that would arrive sometime after midnight. He'd cleaned the house twice, prepared fresh flowers for the kitchen island, and stocked the refrigerator with Leora's favorite foods. But as evening approached, he realized that the physical preparations were meaningless. What mattered was whether the man she found when she walked through that door was worth coming home to. At 8:30 p.m., Noah fed Elijah his evening bottle, noting how much more confident his movements had become. The baby's routine was second nature now. The slight shift in position that eased gas bubbles, the way to test bottle temperature against his wrist, the gentle circular motions during burping that Elijah preferred. "Mama's coming home tonight," Noah told his son as Elijah's eyes drifted closed. "She's going to be so amazed at how much you've grown." And Elijah had grown, Noah realized. In the 10 days since Leora left, their son had become more alert, more interactive. His smiles were frequent now, his neck stronger during tummy time. He'd even started making small cooing sounds that weren't quite talking but weren't just reflexive noises either. The realization hit Noah like a physical blow. Leora had missed these developments. While she'd been in Montana healing from the exhaustion of solo motherhood, her son had been reaching milestones she hadn't witnessed. The guilt was overwhelming. Even his transformation came at a cost to her. Noah settled Elijah in his crib for the night, then found himself pacing the first floor of their home. Everything looked different to him now. The pristine kitchen where he'd rarely cooked now showed signs of actual use. A few coffee stains on the marble countertop, baby bottles in various stages of cleaning, the subtle chaos that came with real living rather than magazine-perfect staging. The living room where he'd once conducted business calls now centered around Elijah's bouncy seat and playmat. Expensive throw pillows had been moved to accommodate burp cloths and receiving blankets. The space felt warmer, more human. At 11:47 p.m., headlights swept across the front windows. Noah's heart hammered as he heard a car door close, footsteps on the front walkway, the pause before the key turned in the lock. When the door opened, Leora stood silhouetted against the porch light, her small suitcase in one hand, keys clutched in the other. She looked different, rested, Noah realized with surprise. Her auburn hair had been trimmed, framing her face in soft layers that caught the hallway light. Her green eyes, which had been shadowed with exhaustion when she left, were clear and alert. She wore jeans and a cream sweater he'd never seen before, and she carried herself with a confidence he'd almost forgotten she possessed. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi yourself," Noah replied, drinking in the sight of her. "How was your flight?" "Long, but it gave me time to think." She stepped inside and set down her suitcase, her eyes already scanning the space. "It's so quiet. Elijah's been sleeping longer stretches. He went down around 9 tonight." Noah closed the door behind her, suddenly uncertain about protocol. Should he hug her? Give her space? "Are you hungry? I made that pasta salad you like." Leora smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in months. "You made pasta salad? I've learned to cook a few things, basic stuff but edible." Noah ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture Leora knew well. "I had to eat something besides takeout while taking care of Elijah." She moved into the living room, taking in the changes. Her fingers traced over a burp cloth draped across the sofa, lingered on the baby monitor sitting on the coffee table. "You really have been doing everything yourself. I told you I had. I believed you, but seeing it..." She picked up one of Elijah's toys, a soft rattle in the shape of a star. "This is new. He likes the texture. Grabs onto it during tummy time." Noah watched her face carefully. "Lee, I need to tell you something. He's been changing, developing. You've missed some things." Leora's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "What kind of things?" "He's been sleeping longer stretches for a week now. His neck control is much stronger. And yesterday, he laughed. Really laughed. Not just gas or reflexive smiling." Noah's voice was gentle but honest. "I'm sorry. I know that's hard to hear." For a moment, Leora's composure wavered. Noah could see the conflict in her expression. Relief that their son was thriving. Pain that she'd missed important milestones. Guilt about choosing her own healing over being present for Elijah's development. "I made the right choice," she said finally, more to herself than to Noah. "I made the right choice." "You did," Noah agreed firmly. "Lee, you were drowning. If you hadn't taken time to remember who you are, you might never have found your way back to being the mother Elijah needs. She looked at him then with something like surprise. You really believe that? I know that. The woman who left 2 weeks ago was disappearing under the weight of exhaustion and isolation. The woman who came home tonight is strong enough to be our partner, not just our caretaker. Leora moved to the kitchen and Noah followed. She opened the refrigerator, noting the prepared bottles, the organized leftovers, the evidence of a man who'd learned to manage a household as well as a nursery. You've changed too, she observed. I had to. The old Noah would have hired a full-time nanny the moment you left and gone back to his 18-hour workdays. He leaned against the kitchen island, watching her explore the familiar space as if seeing it new. This Noah had to figure out what actually mattered. And what matters? This. Right now. You being home. Elijah sleeping peacefully upstairs. Us having a conversation where I'm completely present instead of thinking about tomorrow's meetings. Noah's voice grew more confident. Yesterday, David Chen called with a question about the European expansion, and I told him to make the decision himself. A month ago, that would have been impossible for me. Leora turned to face him fully. I'm proud of you, and I'm terrified. Terrified of what? That this version of you is temporary. That once the crisis passes, you'll slip back into old patterns. She wrapped her arms around herself. Noah, I can't go through this again. I can't rebuild myself just to have our family fall apart from neglect. Then we build safeguards, Noah said immediately. Boundaries that protect what we've learned. Scheduled time that's just for us. Just for family. Regular check-ins where we're honest about what's working and what isn't. You'd agree to that? Actual boundaries around your work time? Lee, I've spent the last 2 weeks working maybe 10 hours total, and the company ran better than ever. David is a better daily manager than I was because he's not trying to control every detail. The business doesn't need my constant attention. It needs my strategic vision, and that doesn't require 18-hour days. From the baby monitor came the soft sound of Elijah stirring in his sleep. Both parents froze listening, but the sound settled into peaceful silence again. I want to see him, Leora whispered. They climbed the stairs together, and Noah felt the familiar warmth of moving through his home with Leora beside him. The nursery was dim and peaceful, Elijah sleeping on his back with one tiny fist near his cheek. Leora approached the crib slowly, as if afraid she might wake him. He looks bigger. He is. He's outgrown most of his newborn clothes. I had to buy the next size up. Noah joined her at the crib, close enough to catch the faint scent of her lavender perfume. I saved all the milestone moments I could. First laugh, first time rolling from side to back, first time he slept 6 hours straight. I wrote them down so you wouldn't miss them completely. Leora's eyes filled with tears. You wrote them down? In his baby book, the one you started but didn't have time to maintain. Noah's hand found hers at the crib rail. I wanted you to have them when you came home. She turned to look at him and Noah saw something new in her expression. Not just love, but respect. Trust. I want to try again, she said softly. Really try. Not go back to what we had, but build something new. Together? Together, she agreed. As if on cue, Elijah opened his eyes. For a moment he seemed confused by the presence of two faces above his crib. Then his gaze focused on Leora, and his mouth stretched into what was unmistakably a smile of recognition. He remembers me, Leora breathed, reaching down to stroke his cheek. He's been waiting for you to come home, Noah said. We both have. Leora lifted Elijah from the crib, and Noah watched as their son settled against her chest with the same trust he'd learned to show his father. The sight of his wife and son together again felt like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. But even as relief washed over him, Noah knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring the real work, learning to be partners instead of strangers, parents instead of providers, present instead of absent. The transformation was complete, but the real test was just starting. 6 weeks had passed since Leora's return, and their rebuilt life had found a rhythm that felt both familiar and entirely new. Noah worked from home 3 days a week, spent 2 days at the Edivane Renewables office in his new role as chairman, and kept weekends sacred for family time. Leora had started writing again, crafting a series of articles about work-life balance in corporate America that had already caught the attention of several major publications. Elijah, now 4 months old, had become the center of their rebuilt universe. His personality was emerging daily, curious about everything, especially fond of music, and possessing an infectious laugh that could dissolve any tension between his parents. But on this particular Thursday morning, their carefully constructed new normal was about to face its ultimate test. Noah's phone rang while he was feeding Elijah his morning bottle, carefully supporting his son's head while the baby drank contentedly. The caller ID showed Helena Morrison, and Noah's instinct was to let it go to voicemail. But something about the timing felt urgent. "Helena, this better be important," he answered, gently burping Elijah. "Noah, we have a situation. Meridian Energy just made an unsolicited offer to buy us out. $15 billion, all cash, with a 48-hour deadline for response." Noah's spoon froze halfway to Elijah's mouth. Meridian Energy was their biggest competitor, a traditional fossil fuel company with deep pockets and a history of acquiring renewable energy startups only to shelve their innovations. $15 billion? Noah's mind raced through the implications. It was nearly double their current market valuation, an offer that would make every investor extraordinarily wealthy. "It's a hostile takeover attempt," Helena continued. "They know we can't ignore an offer this size, but they also know accepting means destroying everything we've built. They want our patents and technology, not our mission." Elijah made an impatient sound, and Noah resumed feeding him automatically, his parental instincts now so ingrained they operated independently of conscious thought. "What's the board's position?" Noah asked. "Split. Half want to take the money and run. Half want to fight, but they're scared of the legal costs and uncertainty. Noah, they need you here. Today. This is exactly the kind of crisis that requires the founder's vision and leadership." Noah looked down at Elijah, who was watching his father's face with the intense focus that meant he was picking up on emotional tension. In his previous life, Noah would already be in his car, racing to the office to wage corporate war. The company he'd built from nothing was under attack, and every instinct screamed at him to drop everything and fight. But he wasn't the same man anymore. "Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow at 10 a.m., Noah said finally. "I'll be there. Tomorrow." "Noah, 48 hours means..." "Helena, I understand the timeline. I also understand that knee-jerk reactions to hostile offers usually benefit the aggressor, not the target. We need 24 hours to develop a comprehensive response strategy." After hanging up, Noah sat in the sudden silence, Elijah's breakfast forgotten. His son reached out and touched his father's face, a gesture that had become Elijah's way of offering comfort when Noah seemed stressed. "Your daddy has to make a very important decision," Noah told his son softly, "and I'm not sure what the right answer is." Leora appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for her meeting with an editor from Atlantic Monthly. Her career renaissance had been swift and impressive, fueled by years of stored insights and the clarity that came from rediscovering her professional identity. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately, recognizing the tension in Noah's posture. Noah explained the situation while finishing Elijah's feeding, watching Leora's face carefully as the implications sank in. Meridian's offer wasn't just about money. It represented everything they'd fought against when building Edivane Renewables. "What does your gut tell you?" Leora asked, settling into the chair across from him. "To fight, absolutely. Meridian will gut our research and development, lay off half our employees, and turn our innovations into footnotes in their quarterly reports." Noah's voice grew more passionate. "We built this company to prove that sustainable energy could be profitable without sacrificing environmental responsibility. Selling to Meridian would betray every principle we started with." "But?" Leora prompted, sensing there was more. "But fighting means months of legal battles, enormous legal fees, and no guarantee we'll win. It means 18-hour days, constant travel, and returning to exactly the kind of obsessive work focus that nearly destroyed our marriage." The kitchen fell quiet except for Elijah's contented sounds as he played with his high-chair toy. Noah and Leora looked at each other across the table, both understanding that this moment would define not just the company's future, but their family's future as well. "I can't ask you to sacrifice what we've rebuilt for a business principle," Noah said finally. "You're not asking," Leora replied firmly. "I'm telling you what I think you should do." Noah raised his eyebrows, surprised by her certainty. "Noah, you built Edivane Renewables because you believed sustainable energy could change the world. That mission is bigger than our comfort, bigger than our routine, maybe even bigger than our family schedule." Leora reached across the table and took his hand. "The man I fell in love with was someone who fought for things that mattered. I don't want to be married to someone who gave up his principles for an easier life. Even if it means going back to the chaos, the travel, the stress, the uncertainty. It doesn't have to mean going back to the old chaos, Leora said thoughtfully. You're not the same person who started this company. You've learned to delegate, to trust others, to prioritize. Maybe this fight looks different because you're different. Elijah chose that moment to laugh at his toy, a sound so pure and joyful that both parents smiled despite the weight of their conversation. Besides, Leora continued, what kind of world do we want to leave for him? One where his father stood up for sustainable energy when it mattered most, or one where his father chose comfort over conviction? Noah studied his wife's face, seeing the intelligence and strength that had first attracted him to her. She'd rediscovered herself over the past few weeks, and that rediscovered woman was reminding him of who he used to be, before success had made him comfortable, before comfort had made him complacent. If I fight this, it won't be easy, he warned. The best things never are, Leora replied. But Noah, we know how to be partners now. We know how to communicate, how to support each other, how to maintain our family even when external pressures try to tear us apart. You'd really be okay with this? I'd be proud of you for this, Leora corrected. There's a difference. That afternoon, while Elijah napped, Noah called David Chen. I need you to understand something, Noah told his CEO. If we fight Meridian's takeover, it's going to be brutal. They have resources we can't match, and they'll use every dirty trick in the corporate playbook. So we're taking the money and running? David asked, disappointment clear in his voice. Hell no, Noah replied, his old competitive fire returning. We're going to fight them with everything we have. But David, I need to know you're prepared to lead this battle. I'll be involved strategically, but the day-to-day warfare will be yours. Noah, I've been waiting my entire career for a chance to prove sustainable energy can beat big oil at their own game. Just tell me what you need. The board meeting the next morning was unlike any in Edivane Renewables history. Noah arrived with a comprehensive battle plan, but he also arrived as a different leader than the one they'd known for 15 years. Meridian is betting that we'll choose comfort over conviction, Noah told the assembled board members. They're betting that success has made us soft, that we'll take their money rather than fight for our principles. Fighting could cost us everything, Marcus Webb pointed out. If we lose, shareholders get nothing. If we surrender, the world gets nothing, Noah countered. Meridian didn't offer $15 billion because they want to continue our work. They offered $15 billion because they want to stop our work. Helena Morrison leaned forward. Noah, you've been very clear about prioritizing family time. This fight will require enormous personal sacrifice from leadership. It will, Noah agreed. But I've learned the difference between sacrificing for something meaningful and sacrificing for ego. This fight is meaningful. The vote was unanimous. Fight. That evening, Noah sat in Elijah's nursery, rocking his son to sleep while humming The Way You Look Tonight. The familiar routine felt even more precious, knowing that the coming months would test everything they'd rebuilt. Leora appeared in the doorway, watching them with a soft smile. Any regrets? She asked quietly. Only one, Noah replied, not looking away from Elijah's peaceful face. What's that? That it took nearly losing you both to teach me that the most important battles are the ones we fight for love, not profit. Leora moved to stand behind the rocking chair, her hands resting on Noah's shoulders. We're going to win this, you know. The takeover fight. Everything, Leora said firmly. The takeover fight. Our marriage, our family, our future. We're going to win everything that matters because we finally understand what victory actually looks like. As Elijah drifted into sleep, Noah felt a peace he'd never experienced before. Tomorrow would bring corporate warfare, legal battles, and enormous challenges. But tonight, he was exactly where he belonged, holding his son, while the woman he loved stood beside him, ready to face whatever came next together. The old Noah had measured success by acquisition deals and profit margins. The new Noah measured success by this moment, his family intact, his principles uncompromised, his priorities finally aligned with his values. Whatever Meridian energy threw at them, they would face it as partners, as parents, as people who had learned that the greatest victory was choosing love over everything else that pretended to matter. The Seattle Children's Hospital playroom buzzed with the gentle chaos of toddlers discovering the world through play. 28-month-old Elijah Edivane sat in his father's lap, completely absorbed in stacking colorful blocks, while Noah provided a steady stream of encouragement and the occasional steadying hand. Higher, buddy, Noah murmured, as Elijah carefully placed a yellow block on top of his growing tower. You've got this. Elijah's concentration was absolute, his dark hair, so much like his father's, falling across his forehead as he worked. When the tower inevitably toppled, he clapped his hands in delight rather than frustration, already reaching for the blocks to start again. "He gets that from you," Leora observed, settling into the chair beside them with 2 cups of coffee from the hospital cafe. The determination to rebuild after everything falls down. Noah accepted his coffee gratefully, noting how natural it felt to continue holding Elijah while managing other tasks. 2 years of active parenting had made multitasking second nature. "I think he gets the resilience from his mother, the one who taught us both that sometimes you have to tear something down completely to build it back stronger." They were at the hospital for Elijah's routine checkup, but also for something more significant. Leora was 12 weeks pregnant with their second child, and today they would learn whether Elijah would have a brother or sister. The past 2 years had been a whirlwind of challenges and triumphs. The Meridian Energy takeover attempt had lasted 8 grueling months, but Edivane Renewables had emerged victorious, stronger, and more innovative than ever. Noah's transformed leadership style, strategic but not obsessive, passionate but not all-consuming, had proven more effective than his old approach. The company now operated with a revolutionary work-life balance policy that had been featured in Harvard Business Review and copied by dozens of other firms. Noah worked 4 days a week at the office, spent 1 day working from home, and kept weekends completely work-free except for genuine emergencies. Leora's career had flourished beyond anything she'd imagined possible. Her series on corporate transformation and family priorities had won a national magazine award, and her book, Choosing Presence, A Family's Guide to Sustainable Success, had spent 6 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. She'd managed to build a thriving writing career while being fully present as a mother and partner. "Edivane family?" called a nurse from the doorway. They gathered Elijah and his blocks, making their way to the examination room where Dr. Sarah Martinez waited with a warm smile. Dr. Martinez had been Elijah's pediatrician since birth and had watched their family transform from exhausted new parents into confident, connected partners. "How's our little engineer doing?" Dr. Martinez asked, noting Elijah's obvious pleasure in his block-building project. "He's incredible," Noah said, settling Elijah on the examination table while staying close enough to provide comfort. "Walking everywhere, saying new words daily, and he's got this laugh that makes everything better." Dr. Martinez conducted her examination with gentle efficiency, while Noah and Leora took turns entertaining Elijah. The easy cooperation between them would have been impossible 2 years ago, when they'd been strangers sharing a house rather than partners sharing a life. "He's perfect," Dr. Martinez declared. "Height and weight exactly on track, development milestones all met ahead of schedule. You two are doing something very right. We learned from some hard lessons," Leora admitted, "but we learned together." After the pediatric appointment, they moved to the obstetrics wing for Leora's ultrasound. Noah held Elijah while Leora settled onto the examination table, all 3 of them focused on the monitor where their newest family member would soon appear. The ultrasound technician, a cheerful woman named Janet, began the scan with professional precision. "Let's see what we've got here. There's the head, spine looks good, limbs all present and accounted for. Is everything healthy?" Leora asked, her hand finding Noah's. "Everything looks perfect." And Janet adjusted the monitor angle. "It looks like Elijah is going to have a little sister." The room went silent except for the steady whoosh of the baby's heartbeat through the speakers. Elijah looked up at his parents with curious eyes, as if sensing that something important was happening. "A daughter," Noah whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "A sister for Elijah," Leora added, tears flowing freely. They drove home through the familiar streets of their Seattle neighborhood, Elijah chattering happily from his car seat while Noah and Leora processed the magnitude of adding another child to their rebuilt family. "Are you scared?" Leora asked as they pulled into their driveway. "Terrified," Noah admitted with a laugh, "but it's a different kind of scared than last time. Last time I was afraid I wouldn't be good enough. This time I'm afraid of how much I'm going to love her." "We know how to do this now," Leora said confidently. "We know how to be partners, how to support each other, how to stay connected even when everything feels chaotic." That evening, after Elijah was asleep, Noah and Leora sat in their living room planning for their daughter's arrival. The space looked different now, still beautiful, but lived in and loved. Family photos covered the mantel. Elijah's toys had permanent residence in elegant baskets, and everything reflected the warmth of a house where people actually lived rather than just resided. "I want to tell you something," Leora said, curling up beside Noah on the sofa. "2 years ago when I left for Montana, I wasn't sure our marriage could survive. I loved you desperately, but I didn't know if love was enough to bridge the gap between who we were and who we needed to become. And now I know that love isn't enough by itself. Love has to be accompanied by choice, by daily commitment, by the willingness to keep growing together." Leora's voice grew stronger. "But when love is accompanied by those things, it can survive anything." Noah pulled her closer, thinking about the journey they'd traveled from that terrible night when she'd left their house with a single suitcase. "I used to think success meant never failing at anything. Now I know success means learning to fail better, to rebuild stronger, to choose what matters over what merely seems urgent." "Speaking of success," Leora said with a mischievous smile, "David Chen called while you were giving Elijah his bath. Edivane Renewables just landed the contract for the largest solar installation in U.S. history." Noah absorbed this news, which would have sent him into celebratory overdrive 2 years ago, with calm satisfaction. "That's wonderful. David and the team have earned it. Aren't you excited? This is the biggest win in company history." "I'm proud," Noah said thoughtfully. "But Elijah said, 'Daddy, love you' for the first time this morning, and we found out we're having a daughter this afternoon. The solar contract is maybe the third most exciting thing that happened today." From the baby monitor came the soft sounds of Elijah talking to himself in his crib, the stream of toddler consciousness that marked his transition to sleep. Both parents smiled at the familiar comfort of their son's voice. "I have something for you," Noah said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. "I've been writing in this since the night you came home from Montana. Letters to both our children documenting this journey we've been on." Leora opened the journal carefully, reading the first entry dated 2 years ago. "Dear Elijah and little sister, who we don't know about yet, your mother came home tonight, and I finally understood what it means to choose love over everything else. I want you both to grow up in a family where presence is prioritized over profit, where relationships matter more than achievements, where success is measured by how well we love each other. Today we begin again, not as the people we were, but as the people we're becoming. I hope that by the time you're old enough to read this, we've built something beautiful enough to be worth the struggle it took to create it." Leora's tears fell onto the pages as she read entry after entry, documenting their rebuilding process, their victories and setbacks, their growing understanding of what family truly meant. "There are letters to our daughter in here too," Noah said softly. "Starting from the day we found out about her, I wanted both our children to understand that they were wanted, planned for, celebrated from the very beginning. This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me," Leora whispered. Later that night they stood together in what would soon become their daughter's nursery. The room was still empty except for paint samples Leora had scattered on the floor, but it already felt full of possibility. "What should we name her?" Noah asked, his arm around Leora's shoulders. "Something that means hope," Leora replied immediately. "Because that's what she represents. Hope that we've learned enough to do this right from the beginning. Hope that our family can keep growing stronger instead of falling apart under pressure. Hope it is then. Hope Edivane." "Hope Edivane," Leora agreed, the name settling around them like a promise. As they prepared for bed, Noah reflected on the conversation that had started this entire transformation. Leora's desperate words 2 years ago. "I can't do this alone." She'd been right, of course. No one could do it alone. Not parenting, not marriage, not building a life worth living. But together, they could do anything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Preparing for their daughter's birth, managing a growing company, writing deadlines, the beautiful chaos of raising 2 children while maintaining their own relationship. But tonight, Noah felt the quiet confidence that came from knowing they would face those challenges as true partners. He thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago, successful by every external measure but failing at everything that actually mattered. That man would have been terrified by the prospect of another child, another responsibility, another potential source of chaos in his carefully controlled world. This man, the one who'd learned to measure success by bedtime stories and family dinners, and the sound of his wife's laughter, couldn't wait to meet his daughter, couldn't wait to teach her about sustainable energy and social justice and the importance of choosing love over convenience. Couldn't wait to show her that her father was the kind of man who fought for things that mattered, who prioritized presence over productivity, who understood that the most important legacy wasn't the company he built, but the family he nurtured. As Noah drifted off to sleep beside the woman who'd saved his life by being brave enough to risk their marriage, his last conscious thought was gratitude. Gratitude for second chances, for the courage to change, for a love strong enough to survive transformation. In 6 months, Hope Edivane would arrive to complete their family. But tonight, everything was already perfect. Not because it was easy, but because it was real, honest, and built on a foundation strong enough to last a lifetime. Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.